episode of Better Tech, Better Living. I'm Hans Ekman, your host, and today we have a really cool topic that is emerging in a lot of organizations. And much like anything new, we really don't know what it means or what it is going to mean. To help talk about low code, citizen developers, business managed apps, I have two brilliant people who have been working in or experimenting in this area and are going to help lead us through the conversation. First, I'd like to introduce Michael Roth.
Hi there. Nice to have you. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. And also, welcome back to the show, AJ.
Thanks, Hans. Great to be here.
Well, before we get into the topic, and tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got involved or interested in citizen development.
I think I'll start, or Hans, AJ, are you going to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, my name is Michael Roth. I'm from Germany. I'm 36 years old. I live in Cologne. I have two beautiful daughters. And I consider myself to be a blogger, speaker, and some kind of an artist. And I work in IT, despite having no tech background at all. That's led to my passion lately, which is around bringing kind of automation, the possibility to build your own apps and to automate stuff to non-technical people. Actually, I write on my blog content for absolute beginner in the field who have no idea. I'm the one who always asks the stupid questions you almost don't dare to ask. And you can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or at my blog. And actually, this June, I'm a little bit excited. Actually, we are even going to start our own conference about automation, actually, and getting into automation as a whole. It's called the Power Platform Starter Days, and we aim for complete beginners, career switchers, or people who have no idea whatsoever who want to build a career in tech, and we want to make that happen. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Fantastic. And how would people find your blog if they wanted to follow along with your journey?
Oh, yeah. Now it would have come really handy if I have a memorable name that works on an international level, right? But I don't have. I think I have to post the link somewhere in the end. It's called Gezeitenbrand, which is an artificial word from German, a play of words, and it's tricky.
Wonderful. Well, we'll get that added to the comments here and to the comments wherever you might be watching this at the end so that you can tune in. And one of the great things AJ introduced me to Michael is that as he's going along this journey and learning and discovering, he's sharing that journey with you so that you can follow along, learn from the things that he's figured out, avoid the mistakes, which is often even more valuable, and really get the guidance, and excited to hear about the conference coming up. So AJ, how did you get involved in all of this?
So I actually started out as a developer and went to school for that. Got my degree in software development, and then got about a year into it. So was doing some web development for a consulting firm and hated it. So I found myself just really enthralled with the process, figuring out what was going on there, and transitioned into a business analysis role. And that kind of led me into the career path that I had for a long time. And then I went into Microsoft Dynamics, and worked in that space as a consultant for about 7 years. That has transitioned, the entire product has transitioned into what's now known as the Power Platform. And it includes a lot of other things that I found very interesting. And, coming from a software development background, it was easy for me to kind of ramp up into some of that, where I was able to build really cool things or take processes that were kind of junky or clunky from a workable standpoint and automate them. So I just found a passion for that and was able to add some, what I'm calling humanity, back into work, where it's, if you are sitting and copying and pasting into a spreadsheet, you're wasting your life. How can we add some humanity back into how you work?
Yeah, but if I'm not constantly copying and pasting or moving paperwork around, then I'm going to have to do real work, and that's not fun. Like you're going to take all the joy of cut and paste out of our work environment.
I'd love to talk about that because I feel like that is honestly one of the big stigmas about automation. People are like, well, if I don't have this, then you're taking my job. So if we could talk about that today, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Let's definitely work that in. Before we get there, though, we've often known that the people who are closest to the problem or the service area are often the best ones to solve it. And that's kind of what has pushed us towards citizen development and having our business teams or our operation teams create their own and manage their own applications because they generally know what it is they do or are trying to do. But what is citizen development? What are low code environments? What is this rise of this new generation of tools that organizations are looking into?
Well, if I might say something, I think you gave a very valid explanation already, actually, there are people on the job who are very, very skilled and expert for their own problems they have, and they have possibly a good solution in their head, but maybe they are not literate enough in technical kind of ways to express themselves or to build an app that really solves or fixes a problem or solves their need or something like that. And I think that's the very core of it, to give non-IT people the capability to build business applications to address user-specific needs. But with that, half a sentence beneath it, it's like their own needs, so to say. I think I often come to people who say, now we have a citizen developer and he can build all the apps for all the organization. And I think that's a core problem actually of the understanding of citizen development. Citizen development is not about building cheap apps very fast or something like that. That's to solve like every issue of the whole organization. That's the point, I think.
So this isn't all of a sudden we get rid of IT and every business unit is building their own apps and the universe is rainbows and unicorns. Where does this fit in? Where do we start? Where are we thinking that the value is for these business managed applications versus our core IT systems, or even supporting the platform that we're using in these low code environments?
I think it's a great question. So to me, I think it starts with the person. So I can do things personally where I can automate my own job. So for example, I was getting requests that were coming into my email inbox, and then I would have to take those and turn those into Azure DevOps user stories, right? And so that process would take me anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes per user story to go in and fill it all out, add all the criteria, et cetera. And frankly, it was like, this is a lot of repetition in what I'm doing. So I didn't like doing all of those, click the buttons and flip the switches. So I ended up building an automation process that would take it from my inbox, and as soon as I flagged it and put it into a special folder, it would pick it up, transition it into a DevOps user story, and then I could start from there with just the little bit, and all of the documentation was there. I knew who sent it. I knew roughly what criteria was there, and all I had to really do was add the acceptance criteria. So that for me is one of the scenarios where I, as the end business user of those applications, was able to take something that I would normally do over and over and over again and save myself about an hour to 2 hours a week.
Wow. So in essence, if we think about something as easy as Microsoft Outlook, where we use filters or we use labels or categories to help manage our inbox and our calendar events, or even something like Excel, where we might write a simple macro or use some of the built-in tools to better process the data, is this more of an extension, a more powerful extension of that, where we're using an outside tool to help out with some of these, in this case, more repetitive processes? Where does this fit in? Where do we go? Where do our current tools leave off and we start getting into the realm of the citizen developer apps?
Well, actually, I think we don't leave the current tools. We just connect them in a better way. That is the point, and maybe one of the points that is really remarkable or important for a citizen developer. You don't invent something new, so to say. You're working with what you have. Is in the case of Microsoft 365 prevents you with, and that's where you start actually. And to get to the question, where does it fit in, and where are maybe the pros and cons, so to say. I thought about it lately, and AJ, you gave this very good example. Actually, you had the need to put like information from an email to DevOps into the user stories, and you could have approached IT department and said, okay, I need an app for that because every day I'm spending like 10 minutes on every mail to just do that. But the chances that the IT department would say, great, we just waited for you and for this demand, let's build an app for that. The chances are pretty low, right? And I think, yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to say on top of that, the alternative is now just give everybody access to DevOps. And so now it's a change management process as well. So I have to train all of the other people. So instead of that, I don't have to do all of the change management for, well, now we're all going to be in DevOps and I'll do this. So I think you're absolutely right. So the trade-off there is keep the process the same, but solve it technically.
Exactly.
So, Michael, something prompted you to explore Microsoft Dynamics and get into low-code development. And not only that, but to share that journey through your blog and through conversations through some of the networks that you participate in. How did you get started? What prompted you to say, wow, I'm not busy enough. Now I'm going to look for something else to learn and do because eventually it's going to pay off better returns. So how did your journey start and what prompted you to start building your own apps and learning how to do this?
Well, I think I got two trigger moments, two triggers actually that brought me there. But first, a little bit of clarification. I have no idea about Dynamics. I've never worked with Dynamics, with databases, with relational databases and stuff like that. I come, so to say, from the other side of the business or the low-code development. Especially in the Microsoft area, you have, if you're talking about apps, you have the model-driven apps, which is Dynamics, statistics, stuff like that, and the Canvas apps. I'm the Canvas guy, and I have no idea about the rest. So, but Dynamics is still something I'd like to approach and like to learn more about, but not today. Maybe
I know a guy.
Oh, that's cool because I'm constantly looking for people who can make it, who can explain it in a way so that I can understand. And that's a challenge. Just to mention it here.
Sorry, my mistake.
No problem.
If this is somewhat new to you all, it is. I am just an egg when it comes to learning in this space. So, where did you start, and where, or more specific, where have you had success with what you've done so far?
Yeah, so that's actually a good point to connect with, to say, how did I come into all of this? And you said, what did you say? I'm not busy enough. I need something more to learn or something. And that was exactly the point. I was too busy. And naturally, I'm kind of lazy. And I went into IT jobs coming from organizational development. I'm actually a trained pedagogue or educational science guy. So I trained people and teams how teamwork works actually. And I was consulting organizations in their kind of development and that. And it happens to be that I was on an IT project and they needed something like a translator between IT department and business departments. And I don't know, had a affiliation for IT, so I could help a little bit. And then it turned out that that there is a huge gap between IT and business. So some kind of translation would make sense actually. And since I'm said at the beginning of the sentence that I'm lazy, I tend to ask tasks that I have. So why do I do them? And quite often actually, and especially coming from organizational development, what I did there usually was I'm looking at the structures and processes that have been grown in workplaces. And I was questioning that. I was, why do you do that? What purpose do you have? What value does it bring you? And why is it there altogether? And that's something I did in the IT area as well. And especially if you do a task repetitively, or like once or twice or 3 times or whatever, then you think, well, maybe I can automate it, or isn't there a better way to do this? Because I particularly don't enjoy copy pasting. I've done that for a couple of years, copy pasting huge Excel spreadsheets. And I was actually, there was Netflix on one screen on the other, and just to keep me entertained, because this was a boring job. It's unbelievable. But yeah, so I like to question my task that I have, and if the answer is somewhat like we have always done it that way, then yeah, then I don't see the need to do it at all, actually. And recently I just got hands on a book again from David Graeber. He published it in 2018. I don't know if you know it. It's called Bullshit Jobs, and that's, I think, one of the best jobs to the best books to read if you're in consulting or think about automation or like work at all, because that's pretty much amazing. It makes you think, what do we do the whole day to keep us just entertained and just keep you busy? Yeah, so laziness is one point that brought me into IT, actually. And I think, but the more important point is a classic boy meets girl story. There was this woman, I met her, and she was a Microsoft 365 consultant. And I am a Microsoft 365 consultant. What more do I need to say, actually? Because sometimes you do stupid stuff to get to talk to women, actually. And she was the one who talked me through my first workflow I've ever built, and introduced me to like the deeper meaning of Microsoft 365, the tech community, and all this. And yeah, that really got me going, actually.
So one of the dangers of copying and pasting and moving information around is, at least for me, really easy to make a mistake if you're off by a cell or you paste the wrong way, or knowing how paste works, because sometimes it pastes values, sometimes it redoes cell references, and you could spend far more time proofing and editing and trying to figure out what's going on. So talk to me a little bit about the potential to, now, I mean, we talked about the time savings and the value savings. What about the improvement to quality and reliability in our systems if we can automate some of these potentially, error prone tasks?
Sure. So one of the ones on a project that I'm working on now is it's an approval process. And so they go in, and once they get data into a certain state, they go in and check off, do I have this, do I have this, do I have this, and have a couple buttons. And then the whole approval process has been automated. So I actually can't take credit for the automation, but I can still talk about the process itself. So the process then would go, and instead of what would traditionally happen of, I'm now here, I'm going to send an email to Hans, you're going to look at this, review this, and approve it, send me an email back. We both have to check our inboxes, and we're also outside of the tool that we are using day to day, right? So instead of that, what we do is we have an approval process that automatically kicks it over to either Teams or your email, and then you click a button in one of those, and it says, good job, this is approved, rejected. You can type in any sort of approval or rejection comments, and then it comes right back into the application that you were in anyway for all of your data logging and tracking, right? So things like that, where you can take data that would normally move out of system A and go into system B and C and D, process-wise, you can now automate within one application. And it keeps everything kind of centralized so that your data is stored in one and housed in one area, right? So things like that, I think, are the easy way to automate those. I think what Michael does is a little bit different. So he takes elements of multiple different data sources and builds them into one, what they call Canvas app. And then that allows you to basically be your own developer. So take data that would traditionally have required a developer to evaluate and connect, and really allow you to do that and surface that into one app that can take up to a day of development, and now you have a full-blown app that can be deployed to users.
Well, I'd like to add that it was a really good explanation, actually, and a very good example. But I'd like to say, as you mentioned, Canvas apps or apps specifically, I just learned from somebody working in IT actually that an app is just a fancy way to look at your data. It's nothing. So automation is a nice point, and in the last couple of weeks actually I worked a lot more with workflows because that is where the magic happens. And I usually start with easy examples, which you can then scale up, like you described, AJ. An email comes in, and then you have some kind of automation that puts the information from the email to a different source where everybody can read it, for example. And that would automate an approval process that starts automatically and stuff like that. And then I don't know, you get some more data sources in and scale this whole workflow up, and it works and works. And at some point in the approval process, you have like to add some data or like to change a name or give a product number or whatever. And to do that, I usually use an app just to aggregate like every point in this whole process to one user interface where you can work with it. So I think being your own developer is pretty cool, and building apps is pretty cool. But actually, once you understand that the app is nothing more than looking at your data and work with your data and manipulate your data, it's kind of I don't know. Did it lose its sparkle? I don't know. I sometimes think apps are cool, but the real magic happens in under the hood, so to say.
Excellent. I think that illustrates well one of the cardinal rules I have when I'm looking at process improvement and automation, which is try and automate anything where you're moving or calculating information. But where you need a person to make a decision, make sure they have the best, most reliable information at the time that a decision is made, not try and automate decisions that really, that's why we have people. How does this fit into your approach to building apps or considering, we have limited time? How do you decide where to focus your time or where the best value for building some of these apps might come from?
AJ, you wanted to say something?
I was going to say, so on the dynamic side, I would go into call centers and you would see people that would use 15 different applications, and they would have all of these little keyboard shortcuts for flipping from application A to B to C to D, right? Because all of those separate apps needed to have just a little bit of information. And so that, I think, is one of those areas to add productivity when you can remove some of the context switching that happens from all of those different applications. And then also you can streamline not only your process, but some of the tools that you have to support from an IT perspective. So by using something like this, you're able to sunset either legacy applications or applications that only serve one particular purpose into something that allows you to have a much fuller experience and centralize some of that data.
That are good points, but I would like to add something, maybe a point of view we haven't discussed yet, and I think that's very crucial here. I think, so quite often I have customers who ask me if I can build an app for them or workflow or whatever. And usually with no and low code development, I'm always asking them back, why don't you ask a real developer here? So what is the benefit of me having into it? And we are discussing back and forth what is actually low and no code development and what is citizen development and what does it mean. And I would like to emphasize this here one more time. Not one more time, maybe for the first time. I think, well, for me, in the end, no and low code is about helping people to help themselves. I would like to deliver the possibilities that they can help themselves, because otherwise they would have to describe me what their problem is. Like you, AJ, you say, I want to improve the quality or the productivity in a call center or something. I don't know how to improve the productivity because I don't have that problem. I'm just an outsider. Somebody could explain it to me. That's true. But still there would be a gap in communication, and maybe we would talk about different things in the end, and we have to have multiple ways and meetings to optimize this app that I'm building. I much more appreciate when the people are learning to build those apps themselves, to learn the basics, and then they can start from there to look at their own problems and fix their own problems. That's, I think, where the magic of no and low code development actually happens.
I totally agree with that. You know, and then you can take it from there and do more on top of that. So you're 100% right. Where you know you can take a SharePoint list of something that people are tracking and quickly turn that into an app that allows you to build that, share that, etc. So I 100% agree.
Randy
And-
Horton brings up an excellent point as we're looking at this and because we're dealing with it every day, it's easy to forget what is an app. Like when we talk about apps, what are we actually talking about? You know, what are some of the possibilities there? So can we take just a second and break down what an app is? And for everyone who has joined us or is viewing from wherever, you know, please use the comments if you have any questions or comments for AJ and Michael, and we'd be happy to work those in. So what are we talking about when we mean app in its shorter version?
That's a very good question, actually, and I don't think I have a, have a fulfilling answer, actually. For me, an app is always, like I said earlier, a user interface where I can manipulate my data or view my data. But I know that the question is actually maybe around what's possible. What is like what the art of the possible? What can I do? What can I think of? What can I even dream of? So what is possible with making apps? I just tend to show people a quick demo of a really long workflow, just to show what areas, what applications can I connect to, what can I bring together. But I think AJ is much more suited to explain what an app actually is. Or
No, I agree with that. I think the term is fluid. You know, we can have an app that, like SharePoint. SharePoint's an app that we can use to look at data and sort it and do a whole bunch of different things. That may not necessarily be suited for what I need. If I need to have two different data sources, I can't use that app for this. So I build yet another app to take the data from there and surface other data, right? So I think that the term is loose for what you can actually do. So there's things that are kind of pre-built that you can get, or you can build your own and just have a different user interface for surfacing that data.
So in essence, you know, leading on what Michael said a little bit ago, is it's not necessarily up to us to solve someone else's problems. There may be things that we can do because we have knowledge or experience, but often what we're doing is we're trying to better enable the people on the front line, the people who own that process, to do their job a little bit better, a little bit faster, at a little higher quality without additional effort. So these apps could be end user apps, or as AJ mentioned, they could be behind the scenes to take and manage information from one or more sources or systems and put them into the system that our teams are already using so that they can get that information either over and into the format that they're using, or improve the information or the management of that in the app that they're already familiar with, or application or tool.
Right.
So along this journey, I think some of our greatest lessons have been from our most painful points or biggest mistakes. What are some of the key lessons or tips you've learned when maybe things didn't go quite right?
Well, with the application lifecycle management in some of the citizen developer stuff, there is none, right? So there's no checks and balances from IT. Anybody can develop anything, and then now it's out there that could potentially provide more IT support questions of, hey, this app that I built doesn't work. And then, you know, you have IT support scratching their heads going, well, why did you do this? You know, so I think that there's a lot of that aspect of citizen development, that we're still kind of in the wild west of developing apps and people being able just to go in and start clicking and clacking and making things.
yeah, I think that's a good point, actually, especially in low code and no code development. There is no right or wrong. You have to find your own way, and it's difficult to do that sometimes because, as I said earlier, I have no clue about dynamics. And I have a pretty large group of friends who are in IT forever, and they are Power Platform enthusiasts, and they love to build apps. And we were talking for quite some time actually, and it took me so long to figure out that they're just talking about model-driven apps, and they are always, all of them come from the dynamic side. And actually we were talking two different languages, and it took me a while to figure it out, and I was always wondering, what's wrong with me? Why do I don't get it? The point is, when I switched the conversation over to more Canvas apps or to different functions that I use in there, I were clueless. That was pretty interesting, actually. So the biggest chance and the most difficult challenge, I guess, is to find your own way and to get inspiration where it might help you, but to not mislead you to a path that's not yours. So to say that.
Michael Bathurst asks, is this something that you can get rich doing? You know, from a job, a career, or a monetary standpoint, you know, we know phone app developers can get rich for, you know, launching birds at buildings and stuff. Is this an area, because a lot of this sounds very internal and process improvement, is this an area where someone could potentially get rich, or where do you see this in the career advancement for people who are looking at this area?
So, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask the question, what does rich actually mean? So when are you rich? How much money do I have together, or is it free time that I crave for? It depends, but the classics thinking rich people, I don't know. I don't think so, but it's a amazing way to land a job, to get a stable job, and it's a door opener to a whole IT career that is really, really valid. I think that's.
Well, I was going to have a much simpler answer. So I just started consulting for myself. So Michael, follow up with me in like a year and a half, and I'll let you know if I got there. So no, I think, Michael, you're right. Absolutely, that this is it's an opportunity. Hans, you speak at conferences about business analysis. To me, I feel like this is the next evolution of a business analyst. This is taking things that you would normally do process-wise, but now I can implement them. Microsoft has allowed you now to take Visio diagrams, and if you do them in the business process mapping notation, BPMN, then you can just automatically turn that into a Power Automate flow, right? So now I can automate literally my diagram. And so because I was able to work with the business team, get their decision process, whatever, I can build those into automated solutions. So again, it's taking your business analysis skills from the listening and the documenting and the asking those right tough questions to now I'm on the technical side building out solutions at the same time as I'm gathering requirements. And I feel like that is that next progression of skill set that business analysts are going to really have to hone down and say, well, that need for just the soft skills, I think, is passing us, and you have to be a little bit more gritty in the tech skills and in the details to kind of move into that, unless you're more on the visionary side of, I think, business analysis.
So are you becoming rich or not?
I said, yeah, just give me a year and a half, let me know, or I'll let you know. I'll follow up with you, and then I'll see where things have gone.
All right, amazing.
So it'll either be yes, or I'm now destitute asking one of you guys for a job.
You can have a job anytime I want, and you'd have no trouble if you decided to go back. So, you know, obvious from my lack of hair and that everything's gray that's remaining, over my career as another person who accidentally got into IT and never meant to do any of this stuff, there's been a number of waves where organizations have tried to minimize or get rid of developers and put more of the focus and attention, whether it's on the BA, whether it's on the end user, to be able to create and manage their own tools. BPMN was a great asset, and there was going to be a wave where we'll never need developers again because you build out the process flow and it will automatically build this app for you. And that never really transpired. What is different today in the tools, the platforms, these low-code environments that seems to make it more viable for end users or people in the middle between operating teams and IT to actually create these viable tools that weren't really possible in the past?
I think you have more possibilities to connect more data sources and make more of the things you have than in the past, actually. But yes, you brought up a pretty good point, actually. That can put a lot of pressure onto the user to do something, to learn again something new, to not be dependent on IT departments and developers anymore. But I think that can never be the answer. I think getting rid of developers altogether is never a good idea. And I wanted to bring up the hashtag Better Together. It's always the best thing. If I work with my customers and teach them how to use the Power Platform, how to use the tools, what's possible, we always gather people from different departments and areas at one table to discuss problems and work processes from different points of view and to get everybody involved, actually. So I think, to come back to your question, you have more possibilities and it's easier to connect different applications and data sources nowadays, but that can't be forced on, I don't know, one group of people.
Yeah, and I would say that I think the agile methodology has taken away the business analyst role from that, where you're not really like you're a developer, you're part of the development team, but are you? And it's added a lot of questions to that specific role of, well, where does it sit? Does it sit on the business side? Does it sit on the development team? How do we equate your effort to the sprint? Like all of this kind of stuff. And I feel like now this provides the opportunity to be a developer on the team. So I can do the things that a developer does and take some of those tasks on myself, on top of the documentation work that I might be doing, the refinement work that I'm doing for stories, etc. So I think it integrates people more in and provides more of that cross-trained or cross-platform individual. So, it blends that and muddies that water even more, which is, I think, a good thing because it allows people to have a broader skill set.
I would argue that strong, agile teams have BAs or people playing the BA role, and everyone can't do everything. I consider that bagel, but that would probably be a topic for a whole nother show, and I'm sure we'll bring it in. Since these tools and the development of these tools seem to bridge the gap or sit in between the operating teams, the end users, and IT, what can IT do? How can IT better serve and support citizen developers and these business managed apps?
Well, AJ is out, obviously.
Looks like he'll be back in a second. Looks like we had his internet drop for a second, but we'll bring him back in.
Just wanted to show if it's me or him. Okay, but it's him. Okay. Well, what can the IT do? I think that's a very good question, and again, another point we haven't discussed yet, actually. So there is still a gap between IT and, I would say, citizen consultants or something that we need to be aware of, at least. That even if you are familiar with citizen development and with low-code applications, and you build some applications and workflows, if you're approaching an IT guy, you still might not use the same language, actually, and you still want to solve problems from different angles, and you're still different people, and you have to be aware of that, and you have to find a way to work together. I think what is a chance for me right now is actually that I found some kind of language that makes me able to talk to our IT guys, to our developer. One of my best coworkers right now is an on-prem developer, and that's the opposite of what I'm doing, actually. But he has so much knowledge and so much experience in doing things around IT. It took him like 3 days or what to work into Power Automate workflows. it took me weeks. And after 3 days, yeah, I've seen this before. And I've coded all this already. Okay. Oh, now that's easy. That looks good. And now we have the possibility to learn from each other. I tell him how I would build my flows and how I build my solutions, and he's always like, "Why are you doing this?" I said, well, it works, and there we go. And he's teaching me a little bit around the edges to upskill to leverage my own skills actually. And he said, "Okay, this works. Is a good way. It's a good app. Here's how we would have done it from IT perspectives, so to say, and then we can bring those solutions together, discuss, and both learn actually from that. Because quite often, let's be honest, his solutions are a little bit over-engineered from my point of view. So, yeah.
Well, that's always the challenge. One of my mentors, Dusty Rhodes, not the wrestler, always said, "I had time to write 5 pages, but I didn't have time to write 1." That to create these streamlined interfaces and communications actually takes more thought and more effort, but in the end is more effective. So, as you mentioned earlier, why did you get into this? Got into this to build more, to give more time, to give more flexibility in your environment. So Randy asked an interesting question, and I'll ask it direct, and then I think there's a spinoff that relates as well to this, which is when individuals or companies are developing applications for mobile devices, they tend to start with Apple devices, iOS platforms, but most of the end users are on Android. You have any thoughts on the draw between Android versus iOS, or starting with iOS devices? And if not, no worries. I know this one's a little more out of the blue.
I don't have any iOS device, and whenever I have a customer that says, "Does this also work on an Apple machine?" I say, "I have no idea. We can try to figure it out, but I have no idea about iOS, Android, and."
Okay. Well, pulling it into the citizen developer conversation, what are some of the thoughts that go into where should that information be accessed by the users? An end user interface, a new tool, or bringing it into tools that they're already using, which has an advantage that there's less learning curve, but might not be as effective as a dedicated interface. So how do you decide where to build some of these apps?
I have to give you the classic consultant answer. It depends.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, especially since I've been a user for most parts of my life as well, and I know how confusing it can be if you get just another app, and when do I use which app? I like the idea of putting apps or putting interfaces into an app that you already have, but that can be too much actually. So one of those apps or user interfaces you already have, if you enhance it with more and more functionality, it becomes, you don't really know where to click anymore. And I think Microsoft is showing a pretty good examples right now how to blow up single applications more and more and more, and that it gets a little bit messy, I think. So
absolutely. Well, and even with the Microsoft, we talked about Office 365. Even a company that big doesn't have parity within their own apps. Spell check in Teams doesn't work the same way as it does in other apps, and formatting in OneNote is completely different than PowerPoint and Word, which part of me says, you had Word, Note seems to be a simplified version. How come they don't work really anything alike? The icons are the same, but they don't work the same way.
Yeah, that's the point that I learned that when I got more and more into IT, that the icon is the same, the name is the same, but if it's built for different operating systems or different platforms, actually the point, they work so differently, and I can't understand it. I always think Microsoft is that huge organization that you have to split it down into single areas, and the one hand does not know what the other does, and there are different production teams who may or may not talk to each other. I've no idea. That is a good question. Absolutely.
Well, and that's also a good lesson when we look at citizen developers. It would be very easy to build localized applications, tools, improving information flowing into the tools you're using. But if those don't align within your product and product families or your operating teams, you may be creating a local solution that isn't taking the group where you need to go as an organization. So making sure that you're still getting that alignment to enterprise goals, enterprise strategies, and enterprise priorities is critical so that the individual teams aren't successful, but the organization is failing because everyone's going off in different directions.
Yeah, well, on the one hand, I'm with you. On the other hand, I think if it just costs you 2 hours to build an application to fix one problem that you and only you and your coworker have, then it's fine. So I don't need to streamline it in a way that it fits into the overall concept of the whole enterprise or something, because low and no code applications, I think, are allowed to be a little bit rough on the edges and just are small solutions. If I want to build an enterprise-wide application, then I should involve some real developers as well to just think of everything and to be if you build an application for like the whole organization, then maybe you have to make sure that your app will run all the time, that you provide a support for it, for example, and that it's scalable, and that you have some kind of documentation around. And that are those topics that usually come from the professional development department, who say that is crucial, actually. And I think there is where the line gets a little bit blurry between low-code development and real development.
Absolutely. And kind of fitting that in, that would mean that if you're using these low-code solutions to help improve what the team is already doing, then you naturally have that alignment and support because you're helping them fulfill their processes and goals already. If you change the outcome of what they're doing, you need to make sure that new outcome is still aligned to what the organization is doing, and that might take a little more coordination, a little bit more thought.
Let's say a little bit more coordination. Actually, that's where change management and user adoption comes into play. If you bring them something completely new, when they don't see right away what the outcome is and how could they benefit from that, then you have to convince them or show them, and that is like a whole job industry, as you know. But if you just improving the work that they're already doing, they will grab it right out of your hands, and they will say, it doesn't look that nice and shiny. Never mind, gets the job done. And I think that's the charming point of those citizen development, so to say.
Excellent. Well, Michael, I really appreciate you joining, especially considering the time difference. Love to have you on the show in the future to keep us updated with what's going on, especially with the conference and the blog. We could spend an entire show talking about IT support and what this means to governance. How do you make sure that the accountable people are still held accountable in the future? Any parting thoughts, comments that you want to share with the audience? And then, just a recap on where people can find you. I know we'll post some links to your different, to contact you, but parting thoughts.
Well, parting thoughts would be actually, if people who are listening and watching are interested into looking into automatization and the whole thing, especially for this Microsoft service and Cosmos I'm talking about, I really recommend to check out the Power Platform Starter Days. It's a conference. I'm not sure if it's already overbooked by now, but this will be a conference that will show up regularly, where we really start on a low level. Even below the normal Microsoft intro level, which is level 100, we start at level 50. Like, if you have no idea, if you have no account or whatever, we start at that point. And in the end, we will connect all the attendees with a mentor who's coming from the business, who has been in the field for years and who knows how it works and how to get around. And so I'm really excited about this. And we really have a lot of attendees already who say, who are really interested into becoming more familiar with all this, what it means, what's possible, and so yeah. And people can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, usually most, and on my blog, gezeitenbrand.de. It's a German site, but actually it's in English. I just write in English, and I think I have to give you the link later on that we can share it in the wherever.
Well, fantastic. I again really appreciate you being here and sharing your wealth of information. This is an exciting new area that hopefully we've provided at least a starting point and some clarity to those who are getting started or maybe interested and heard this. For everyone that's listening, please, we'll post a link to Michael's blog so that you can follow along and catch up with his journey. As always, this series, we try and normally broadcast one to twice a week around 5:15 Eastern time on a variety of subjects. So please, follow any of the areas where we're broadcasting so that you can get notified and see if it's a topic you might want to check out. Hope you found this informative and entertaining. Look forward to seeing you all on a future broadcast. And everyone, please stay safe and